She leaned in, her lips trembling against mine, and in that one moment the whole world seemed to fall silent. My heart pounded so loudly I thought she could hear it. When the kiss broke, her eyes locked on mine with a fire I had never seen before. And then, with the softest whisper, she said two words that changed everything, bed. Upstairs. I froze, caught between fear and desire, knowing that nothing in my life would ever be the same again. The night had a softness to it, the kind of quiet that feels like it's waiting for something to happen. The room smelled faintly of coffee and rain from the storm that had passed earlier, leaving the air cool and heavy. I sat across from her, my best friend, the person I had known for years yet somehow never fully understood. Her eyes caught the lamplight in a way that made them glow, and she smiled with a kind of sadness I couldn't quite read. We had spent the evening talking about everything and nothing, our childhood memories, the strange twists life had taken, the dreams we kept locked away because the world didn't always welcome them. The silence between us had shifted. It wasn't the comfortable silence of friendship anymore, it was thicker, charged with something unspoken that neither of us dared to name. I had noticed it for weeks, maybe months, this pull between us that made ordinary moments feel alive. When she laughed too hard and touched my arm, when her eyes lingered a little longer than they should have, when I caught myself memorizing the way her hair curled at the ends, all of it added up to something I was too afraid to face. I had told myself it was in my imagination, that she couldn't possibly feel the same. Yet tonight, something in her gaze told me I wasn't dreaming. She leaned closer over the small table between us, her voice dropping so low it barely carried. She talked about how lonely she sometimes felt, how people saw her as confident and unshakable but inside she was just searching for someone who understood her. I listened, my chest tightening with the urge to tell her I understood, that I had been waiting for her all this time without even realizing it. The minutes stretched on, the air thick with a tension that was both terrifying and beautiful. When she reached across and slid her fingers over mine, I felt the ground shift under me. Her touch was gentle but sure, like she had decided something that I hadn't yet found the courage to admit. My pulse raced as I looked down at our hands, her thumb tracing a slow line across my skin. I didn't pull away. I couldn't. Instead, I felt my body leaning toward hers, as if gravity itself wanted us closer. For a moment, we just sat there, our hands tangled together, both of us breathing a little faster, as though the world outside had dissolved and only this moment mattered. She stood suddenly, her chair scraping softly against the floor, and before I could think, she was beside me. Her hand slid to my cheek, tilting my face toward hers. My breath caught in my throat. I had imagined this, dreamed of it in secret, but nothing could have prepared me for the reality of her lips brushing against mine. It was soft at first, almost uncertain, like she was testing the waters, but when I didn't pull back, the kiss deepened. Every thought, every fear, every doubt fell away in that instant. The warmth of her mouth, the way she breathed into me, the way our hearts seemed to beat in the same rhythm, it was overwhelming. I felt alive in a way I never had before. When the kiss broke, we lingered in the closeness, foreheads touching, our breaths mingling. Her eyes searched mine, steady and unreadable, until the corners of her lips curved into the faintest smile. That's when she whispered it. Two words, sharp and soft at the same time, words that made my entire body flush with heat. Bed. Upstairs. The world seemed to tilt, everything inside me collapsing and exploding all at once. My legs felt weak, my mind dizzy with the weight of her invitation. I wanted to say something, anything, but no words came. All I could do was stare at her, the meaning of her whisper vibrating in my chest like a secret only we could share. I wasn't sure if I was ready for what she was offering, but I knew with absolute certainty that I couldn't walk away. Not now, not after everything we had just shared. The night had opened a door I never thought would exist between us, and stepping through it felt both terrifying and inevitable. My heart thundered in my chest as I rose slowly to my feet, still holding her gaze, knowing that whatever happened next, life would never return to what it had been before that kiss. My legs felt unsteady as I followed her, every step echoing in my ears louder than the storm that had faded outside. The house was quiet, dimly lit, and I could hear only the sound of her footsteps on the wooden stairs, each one carrying a weight that pressed into my chest. I wanted to stop her, to ask if she meant what I thought she meant, but my voice was gone, caught somewhere between fear and desire. My fingers brushed the railing as if to steady myself, but it did nothing to calm the tremor in my body. When we reached the top of the stairs, she paused and turned, her eyes softer now, not filled with the daring flame I saw downstairs but with something more fragile, almost vulnerable. That look stopped me in my tracks. It told me she wasn't just pulling me into a reckless moment. This meant something to her, maybe as much as it did to me. The hallway stretched ahead, shadows painting the walls, and she reached for my hand again, her grip warm, steady, but not forceful. I followed her into the room, the one I had seen so many times before but never like this. I had sat on her bed countless afternoons, laughing, sharing secrets, talking about the world, but tonight it was different. The bed wasn't just a bed anymore, it was a boundary, a threshold, something that could change everything we thought we knew about each other. My chest tightened as she let go of my hand and moved to close the door behind us, the click of the lock sounding louder than it should have. For a moment, silence stretched between us. My mind raced, questions tumbling over each other. Was I ready for this? Would it ruin what we had? Did she feel the same storm inside her that I did? She walked toward me slowly, each step deliberate, her eyes never leaving mine. I could see the faint rise and fall of her breathing, the slight tremor in her hands, proof that she was not as calm as she appeared. When she reached me, she lifted her hand to my face again, her touch lingering this time, fingers trailing along my jawline as though she was memorizing me. Her lips parted like she wanted to speak, but no words came out, and instead, she leaned in to kiss me again. This time, it was different, less hesitant, more certain, yet filled with a tenderness that made my heart ache. My hands moved instinctively, one resting on her waist, the other on her shoulder, pulling her closer, afraid she might change her mind and step away. The warmth of her body pressed against mine, and for the first time in my life, I felt the weight of being seen completely, not just as a friend but as someone she desired, someone she had chosen. The kiss deepened until breathing became a challenge, but neither of us pulled away. My body tingled with every brush of her lips, every sigh that escaped her. When she finally leaned back, her forehead rested against mine, and I could see the conflict in her eyes. There was longing there, yes, but also hesitation, as though she too wondered if we were standing at the edge of something too big to take back. She whispered my name, soft and uncertain, and that sound nearly undid me. I wanted to tell her I was hers, that I had been waiting for this without even knowing it, but fear still wrapped around my throat, choking the words before they could come. She stepped back slightly, her hand slipping into mine once more, and guided me toward the bed. My heart pounded so hard I thought I might collapse. Every inch felt like miles, every second like an eternity. The closer we got, the more my nerves tangled with anticipation, my mind flashing with memories of all the years we had known each other. How could we cross this line and ever go back? Would tomorrow break us apart, or would it finally set us free? She stopped at the edge of the bed, turning to face me again, and I could see tears threatening at the corners of her eyes. It wasn't lust alone pulling us here, it was years of closeness, years of hidden emotions finally spilling over. Her hand squeezed mine tightly, as if asking without words if I trusted her enough to take this step. I didn't know what the future would hold, but in that moment, I realized the truth. I trusted her more than anyone. And even though I was scared, even though the weight of what we were about to do pressed on me like a storm, I didn't want to run. I wanted to stay, to see where this road would lead, even if it terrified me. So I didn't pull away. I held on tighter, meeting her gaze with all the courage I could gather, and let myself fall deeper into the moment we had both been waiting for but never dared to name until now. The room seemed smaller now, as if the walls had drawn closer, holding us inside a secret that only belonged to the two of us. The air was heavy with silence, but it wasn't an empty silence, it was thick, charged, like something alive was pulsing between us. She still held my hand, and I could feel the faint tremor in her fingers, proof that she was just as unsure and overwhelmed as I was. It didn't make me less afraid, but it made me feel less alone in that fear. The bed was right there, its white sheets softly glowing in the dim light, so familiar and yet completely foreign in the meaning it suddenly carried. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat, in my chest, in my wrists, pounding as though it wanted to tear free. I opened my mouth to say something, anything that might ground me, but the words refused to form. All I could do was look at her, and the look she gave me in return was unlike any I had ever seen. It was not the casual glance of a friend, nor the fleeting gaze of someone curious. It was steady, deep, like she had made a choice and was waiting to see if I would follow her into it. She lifted her other hand and brushed a strand of hair from my face, the gesture so tender it nearly brought tears to my eyes. For so long I had wondered if what I felt was one-sided, if I was destined to carry it in silence. And now, here she was, not only acknowledging it but holding me in it. The reality of that broke something open inside me. When she leaned in again, the kiss came with more urgency, more certainty, as if we had crossed an invisible line and there was no need to hold back anymore. Her lips pressed firmly against mine, and I answered without hesitation this time. The world tilted. My hands clung to her shoulders, my fingers digging into her sweater, needing to anchor myself to something as the storm of feeling tore through me. Her body pressed closer until I could feel her heartbeat against my chest, wild and fast like mine. The warmth of her skin seeped through the thin fabric between us, and I shivered, not from cold but from the sheer intensity of being wanted this way. Every second of contact, every shared breath, felt like a revelation, a truth I had been blind to all these years. She pulled back only slightly, resting her forehead against mine, her breath shaky. I saw her lips part as if she were about to speak, but instead she let out a soft laugh, nervous and aching at the same time. That laugh made my chest tighten. It was her, still her, the girl I had shared 1,000 memories with, but tonight she was something more, something I had never dared believe I could have. She guided me carefully to sit at the edge of the bed, her hand never leaving mine. The mattress dipped under our weight, and I realized how close we were, how easy it would be to lose myself completely in her. For a moment, we just sat there, side by side, the silence stretching again but not empty. It was full of questions we were too afraid to ask. I wanted to tell her I loved her, that I always had in ways I didn't recognize, but the words felt too big, too final, too fragile to release into the air. Instead, I leaned into her shoulder, and she let me, her head resting lightly against mine. That closeness alone, that quiet surrender, was enough to make my chest ache with the weight of it. Time seemed to slow. Every breath, every glance, every brush of her hand against mine became magnified. My mind wandered through all the years we had known each other, the late nights studying together, the endless conversations, the shared secrets whispered in the dark. All of those moments had led us here, though neither of us could have known it. And now, sitting on her bed, our hearts tangled together, it felt as though the years had only been building to this truth. She tilted her face toward me again, her lips hovering just inches from mine, and I felt the pull stronger than ever. When we kissed again, it was deeper, slower, filled with a hunger we had both been holding back. Her hand slid to the small of my back, pulling me closer until there was no space left between us. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding, and in that release, I let go of the fear that had been keeping me tethered. When we finally pulled away, the silence returned, but it wasn't awkward. It was full, heavy with everything we couldn't yet say. She looked at me like she was memorizing every detail of my face, as if she was afraid this moment might vanish if she blinked. Her thumb brushed my hand again, slow and steady, grounding me in a way nothing else could. I didn't know where the night would take us, but I knew one thing with absolute certainty: we had crossed into something real, something we could never undo. And even though the unknown stretched out before us like a shadow, I wasn't afraid anymore. Not with her sitting beside me, holding my hand like she never planned to let it go. The quiet of the room pressed against us like a blanket, heavy and warm, wrapping us in a world that seemed separate from everything else. My body still hummed with the echo of her kiss, and my hands trembled faintly in my lap, though I tried to still them. She noticed. Of course, she noticed. She always noticed everything about me. Her hand slipped gently over mine, fingers intertwining with a certainty that steadied me more than any words ever could. For a long moment, neither of us spoke, and I think we both feared that speaking would shatter the fragile magic surrounding us. The silence was no longer awkward or tense, it was full of an understanding, something that had been waiting between us for far too long. Her gaze stayed locked on me, unwavering, searching. I felt it not just on my face but deep inside, as if she were reaching past every layer of fear I had built to protect myself. My throat tightened with emotions I couldn't voice. She was still the girl I had known for years, still the friend who laughed with me until our stomachs hurt, who held me when life knocked me down. But here and now, she was also something more, someone who wanted me, who had chosen me in this moment with a courage I wasn't sure I could match. And yet, sitting there, I realized I wanted to try. She leaned forward again, her lips brushing mine, and this kiss was slower, softer, almost reverent, as though she was savoring it, as though she wanted to memorize the shape of me against her. My heart pounded harder with every second, but instead of fear, there was a strange calm that began to seep into me. Her hand cupped my cheek, her thumb brushing along my skin in slow circles, grounding me even as the world tilted around us. I kissed her back with more certainty this time, letting myself sink into the warmth of her presence, letting the years of hidden feelings bleed into the moment. When she finally pulled away, she didn't let go of me. Her forehead rested against mine, and her breath mingled with mine, uneven and trembling but steady in its closeness. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel alone. She whispered something so quietly I almost missed it, words about how long she had wanted to tell me, how many times she had almost confessed but pulled back in fear of losing me. Hearing that broke something in me, because I had been carrying the same fear, the same silence. My eyes burned, and before I could stop them, tears slipped down my cheeks. She brushed them away quickly, shaking her head like she couldn't bear to see me cry. But they weren't tears of pain, they were relief, release, the kind that comes when you finally see yourself reflected in someone else's heart. We sat together on the bed, our hands still intertwined, our bodies leaning into each other. The room was dim, lit only by the soft glow of the lamp on her nightstand, but it felt like the brightest place I had ever been. I could hear her heartbeat when I leaned against her chest, steady yet racing, mirroring my own. My thoughts wandered through all the nights I had lain awake wondering if love like this was possible for me, wondering if there would ever be someone who would understand, someone who would look at me and see everything I was without turning away. And here she was, sitting beside me, holding me as though the answer had always been her. Time seemed to blur, each second stretching into something timeless. She talked in whispers, soft confessions spilling out between us. She told me about the first time she realized her feelings had shifted, how she had tried to push them down, convincing herself it was only admiration or closeness. She laughed nervously as she admitted how jealous she felt whenever I talked about someone else, how her heart ached every time I smiled at another person in a way that wasn't meant for her. I listened, my chest swelling with the weight of it, because her words were my own unspoken truths, the ones I had buried so deeply I almost believed they didn't exist. I told her things I had never dared to say out loud. How I used to watch her when she wasn't looking, how her laugh had always been my favorite sound, how I felt safer with her than with anyone else. My voice shook, but she listened like every word mattered, like I was handing her pieces of my heart and she was determined to protect them. She pressed a kiss to my temple, gentle and lingering, and whispered that she would never let me feel alone again. We stayed like that for what felt like hours, caught in a bubble of honesty and tenderness, each confession stitching us closer together. The fear was still there, quiet and humming in the background, but it no longer ruled me. What mattered now was the way she looked at me, the way she held my hand as though she had no intention of ever letting go, the way our hearts beat in a rhythm that felt like it had been waiting for this moment all along. And as I leaned against her, breathing her in, I realized that we had already stepped into something we could never turn back from, and I didn't want to. Not ever. The night stretched on, but time had lost its meaning. The only thing that felt real was her hand in mine and the quiet rhythm of her breathing close to my ear. The lamp cast a soft golden glow over the room, outlining her face in a light so gentle it made her look almost unreal, like a dream I might wake from if I blinked too hard. I watched her, memorizing the curve of her smile, the way her lashes lowered when she looked at me with a tenderness I had never seen before. My chest ached with the weight of it. For years, I had convinced myself that she could never feel this way about me, that my love was destined to stay hidden in glances and unsaid words. And yet here she was, holding me like she had been waiting for this just as long. She pulled me closer until our foreheads touched again, her nose brushing against mine in the faintest, most intimate way. Her voice was soft, hesitant, but steady enough to make my heart race. She whispered that she didn't know what tomorrow would bring, that she couldn't promise the world wouldn't make this harder for us than it already was, but she did know one thing: she wanted me, tonight and beyond, if I would let her. Her words sank into me with a weight I couldn't describe, because they mirrored everything I had been too afraid to admit. I could feel tears pricking at the corners of my eyes again, not from sadness but from the sheer depth of what she was offering me. For so long, I had lived with the fear of being unlovable in this way, of wanting something the world so often told me I shouldn't want. And now, she was giving it freely, without hesitation, without shame. I swallowed hard, my throat dry, and whispered back that I wanted her too. The words felt fragile as they left my lips, like they might shatter if I said them too loudly, but her smile told me they were enough. She kissed me again, and this time it was slower, deeper, filled with a kind of promise that words could never capture. Her hands moved to my shoulders, holding me gently, guiding me closer until I could feel every inch of her warmth against me. My fingers clung to her waist, desperate and certain at the same time, afraid to let go in case the moment disappeared. The kiss stretched into something unending, something that seemed to carry all the years of longing, all the moments we had held back, all the quiet nights spent wishing. When we finally pulled apart, we didn't speak right away. Instead, she lay back on the bed, tugging me with her, and I followed without a thought. We lay side by side, facing each other, our hands still linked between us. I studied her face, the softness in her eyes, the way her lips still curved like she was holding back another smile. It struck me how familiar she was and yet how different she felt tonight. She wasn't just my friend anymore. She was the person who saw me, who wanted me, who had chosen me when I had believed for so long that no one would. She asked me, in the quietest voice, if I was afraid. I thought about it for a long moment before nodding, admitting that I was. Afraid of what this might change, afraid of losing her, afraid of a world that would not understand. But then I told her something else, that I was more afraid of not taking this chance, of letting fear dictate my heart again. She squeezed my hand, her eyes shining as though she understood every word without me having to say more. She whispered that we would face it together, whatever came, and the conviction in her tone filled me with a strength I didn't know I had. We lay there for what felt like hours, talking in low voices, sharing secrets and confessions that had never before found air. She told me how she had noticed the way I looked at her, how she had prayed she wasn't imagining it, how every time our hands brushed she had wanted to hold on but stopped herself. I told her how her laughter had always been the brightest part of my days, how her presence had been my anchor even in the hardest times. Every word bound us closer, threading a story between us that was both brand new and years in the making. The night outside deepened, the world beyond her window slipping into darkness, but I didn't notice the passing of time. All that existed was the quiet glow of the lamp, the steady rhythm of our voices, and the closeness of her body next to mine. My fears didn't vanish, but they softened, their edges dulled by the warmth of her hand in mine, the certainty in her eyes. For the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged fully, not in pieces, not in secrecy, but in the arms of someone who saw every part of me and still chose to stay. And as I lay there with her, breathing in the safety of her presence, I realized that this night was not just a moment. It was the beginning of something I had always dreamed of but never believed I would find. The night had grown deeper, the world outside wrapped in silence, but inside her room everything still felt alive, humming with an energy I had never known before. Lying there beside her, I could hear every detail of her, the way her breath caught slightly before evening out, the faint sound of her heartbeat when I leaned close, the softness in her voice when she whispered my name. It felt like being inside a dream I was afraid to wake from, and yet it was more real than anything I had ever known. She reached up to tuck a strand of hair behind my ear, her fingers lingering against my skin, and the touch made me shiver. It wasn't just desire that coursed through me, it was the overwhelming weight of being seen and wanted, of having someone look at me without hesitation, without shame. She began to talk again, her words quiet but steady, confessing how long she had carried these feelings. She told me about nights she had lain awake, wondering if she was fooling herself, wondering if she was imagining the sparks that lit up between us. She admitted how scared she was of losing me, how the thought of speaking her heart out loud had seemed too dangerous, too final, like it might break the one thing she cherished most, our bond. Listening to her, I felt a mixture of relief and sorrow, relief that I hadn't been alone in my silence, and sorrow for the years we had both spent locked in fear. I told her I had felt the same, that I had swallowed my feelings again and again, hiding them behind laughter and long conversations that ended too soon. I confessed how every time she touched me, even casually, it felt like fire under my skin, and how many times I had wanted to reach for her but stopped myself, terrified of what it might mean. The tears came again, uninvited but unstoppable, rolling down my cheeks as I spoke. She brushed them away with her thumb, leaning closer, whispering that I didn't have to hide anymore, not with her. That simple promise unraveled me. I buried my face in her shoulder, holding her tighter, the warmth of her body grounding me as emotion surged through me. She stroked my hair, humming softly under her breath, not rushing me, not pushing me, just being there, steady and present. That patience, that quiet strength, made me realize how safe I was with her, how completely I could trust her with the parts of me I had always kept locked away. We shifted slightly on the bed, curling into each other as though we were pieces of the same puzzle finally finding their place. Her hand rested on my back, moving in slow circles that calmed the storm inside me. I lifted my head and met her eyes, and what I saw there nearly undid me again, love, raw and unguarded, not hidden in shadows but shining openly. It was terrifying in its intensity, but it was also the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. I leaned forward and kissed her again, pouring every unspoken word, every locked-away feeling, into that moment. The kiss was slow, almost aching, like we were both afraid of breaking the spell but too desperate to let it go. When we pulled apart, we didn't speak right away. Instead, we lay there with our foreheads touching, breathing each other in, letting the silence carry everything words couldn't hold. Finally, she whispered that she had never been so sure of anything in her life. My chest tightened at those words, because I had never been sure of anything either, not until now. For years, I had questioned myself, doubted my worth, wondered if I would ever be enough for someone to love. But in that moment, with her looking at me like I was the only person in the world, all of those doubts seemed to fall away. We stayed like that, wrapped in each other's arms, until the heaviness of the night began to settle over us. But even as exhaustion tugged at me, I didn't want to close my eyes. I was afraid that if I did, I would wake up and find it all gone, just another dream slipping through my fingers. She must have sensed it, because she whispered softly, promising she would still be there when morning came. I clung to that promise, holding her tighter, letting it sink into me like a vow carved into my heart. The world outside didn't matter anymore. The doubts, the fears, the questions, they could all wait. All that mattered was the girl lying beside me, the love burning quietly but fiercely between us, and the certainty that nothing would ever be the same again. The first light of morning crept slowly into the room, soft and pale, touching the edges of the curtains and spilling across the sheets where we lay. I had not slept much, maybe not at all, though I couldn't tell the difference between dreams and reality anymore because everything felt surreal. Her arm was draped over me, her body curved against mine, her breathing deep and steady in the quiet. I stayed perfectly still, afraid that moving might break the fragile peace that had settled around us. My mind drifted back to the night before, to the words, the kisses, the confessions we had finally let slip free. It felt like we had crossed into a new world, one where the truth wasn't something to fear but something to hold on to. Yet with that truth came the creeping edge of worry, the thoughts I had managed to silence last night returning with the clarity of day. What would this mean for us? What would it mean for the friendship we had built? Could we exist in this new space without breaking everything we once were? I shifted slightly, and she stirred, her hand tightening around me as if even in sleep she didn't want to let go. The simple gesture made my chest ache with both joy and fear. I turned my head to look at her, studying her face in the soft light. She looked peaceful, younger somehow, without the weight of uncertainty that so often clouded her eyes. I realized in that moment how deeply I loved her, how much I had always loved her, even when I didn't recognize it for what it was. That love had been hiding in every laugh, every lingering glance, every late-night conversation that had stretched until dawn. It had always been there, patient and quiet, waiting for us to be brave enough to claim it. When her eyes finally fluttered open, she looked at me with a sleepy smile, the kind that reached all the way to her eyes and made my heart race. She whispered good morning, her voice husky and soft, and I couldn't help but smile back. I wanted to freeze the moment, to keep us in this bubble where nothing else existed. But reality was already pressing at the edges of my mind, demanding to be acknowledged. She must have sensed the shift in me because her expression grew more serious. She asked if I was okay, if I regretted anything. The question hung in the air, heavy and sharp, and for a second I couldn't breathe. Did I regret it? No. Every part of me screamed no. But I was afraid of what this meant beyond the safety of her room, beyond the quiet of the morning. I told her the truth. I told her I was scared, that I didn't know how to face what lay ahead, that I didn't want to lose her if the world outside wasn't ready for us. Her eyes softened, and she reached for my hand, lacing her fingers through mine with the same certainty she had shown last night. She told me she was scared too, that the fear hadn't gone away for her either. But then she said something that stayed with me. She said that fear didn't mean we had to run. Fear just meant that what we had was real enough to risk everything for. Those words struck deep inside me, settling in a place I hadn't touched in years, a place that believed love could be stronger than the voices that told us we shouldn't exist. We talked quietly for what felt like hours, our voices weaving together in a mixture of hope and hesitation. We didn't have all the answers, and maybe we never would, but there was comfort in knowing we would face the unknown side by side. At one point she leaned in and kissed my forehead, a simple gesture but one that made me feel anchored, like no matter how chaotic the world became, I would always have a safe place with her. The sun climbed higher, filling the room with light, but neither of us moved. We stayed wrapped in each other, holding on to the fragile, beautiful certainty of what we had found, and in that moment, with her arms around me and her promise echoing in my chest, I knew that no matter what challenges waited for us, no matter what doubts or obstacles came, I wouldn't trade this for anything. The fear was real, but so was the love. And for the first time in my life, the love was stronger. The days that followed were unlike anything I had ever experienced. It felt as though the world outside moved at its usual hurried pace, but for us, time had slowed down, giving space to something fragile and precious that was growing between us. Each morning I woke up with her still by my side, her hair spilling across the pillow, her hand loosely resting on mine, and each time it felt like a small miracle. Yet alongside the warmth was the quiet hum of uncertainty, the unspoken awareness that what we shared would not remain untouched once we stepped beyond the walls of her room. The world had a way of questioning love like ours, of twisting it into something shameful, and I knew we would have to face that sooner or later. But for now, In those early days, we built a world of our own, speaking in hushed voices, laughing softly, stealing kisses that lingered longer than they should have, each moment weaving us closer together. One evening, sitting on the porch as the sky turned gold and purple, she looked at me with a seriousness that made my stomach knot. She told me she didn't want to hide, not anymore. Her voice trembled slightly, but her eyes were steady, filled with a kind of courage that shook me. She said she was tired of pretending, tired of living halfway, and she wanted the people in her life to know who I truly was to her. My heart raced at her words, torn between pride and fear. Pride, because she wanted to claim me openly, because she saw me as someone worth standing beside in full view of the world. Fear, because I knew how people could be, how cruel their words might turn, how love like ours could be dismissed, judged, even despised. I stared at her, unsure of what to say, my silence stretching too long, and she reached for my hand, her touch gentle but firm. She whispered that she wasn't asking me to be fearless, only to be with her, and that together we could carry whatever came. Her conviction lit something inside me, a flame I hadn't known I carried. I realized then that all my life I had been shrinking, making myself smaller to fit into spaces that didn't welcome me, hiding my heart because I thought it was safer that way. But safety had never made me feel alive. She had. Her love had. And if she was willing to walk through fire to love me openly, then I wanted to walk beside her, no matter how uncertain the path. I squeezed her hand and told her I was ready, my voice shaking but clear. The relief in her eyes was immediate, a soft smile breaking through as though she had been holding her breath until that very moment. She leaned forward, kissed me in the fading light, and I knew that decision had bound us in a way nothing else ever could. The days after that were not easy. Some people smiled and accepted us, offering warmth that I hadn't expected. Others whispered behind our backs, their eyes sharp and filled with disapproval. There were moments of doubt, nights where I cried in her arms, asking if we had made a mistake. Each time she held me tighter, her words steady, reminding me that love was never a mistake, that we had nothing to be ashamed of. Her strength carried me when mine faltered, and slowly I learned to let my own grow beside hers. We began to walk together without hesitation, her hand in mine in public, our laughter unashamed, our closeness unapologetic. Every small act of defiance became a victory, every shared glance a declaration that we belonged, not just to each other, but in the world. One night, much later, as we lay under the stars, she turned to me and whispered that she had never known happiness could feel like this. I told her I felt the same, that all the years of silence, all the nights of doubt and fear, had led us here, to a love that was worth every struggle. We lay there in quiet contentment, the night sky stretching endlessly above us, our hands clasped tightly together. And as I looked at her, her face glowing softly in the starlight, I realized something I had never been brave enough to believe before, that love like ours didn't just survive, it thrived, even in the face of doubt, even in the face of the world's harshness. It was not perfect, and it was not without challenges, but it was real, it was ours, and it was strong enough to carry us forward. The girl who once whispered two words that changed everything had become my home, my certainty, my reason to stand taller than I ever had before. And though the future was still unwritten, I knew with absolute clarity that I didn't need to fear it anymore, not as long as her hand was in mine. Because love, in its truest form, had finally found us, and we had chosen it, fully, completely, and without regret.